President Biden is expected to use his executive authority today to combat racism and xenophobia targeting Asian Americans. CBS News has learned that he's hoping to address anti-Asian bias connected to the COVID-19 pandemic by means of an executive or presidential memo. In addition to this, President Biden is also setting a new, more aggressive vaccine distribution goal, which he believes may lead to the reopening of schools even sooner. He's now hoping to administer 1.5 million doses a day, a 50% increase from his initial target. CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe has the details.
It's going to be a logistical challenge that exceeds anything we've ever tried in this country.
President Biden acknowledged the difficulties of increasing the rate of vaccinations across the country, but says his administration should be able to speed up how quickly Americans get their shots.
I think with the grace of God and the goodwill of the neighbor and the creek not rising, as the old saying goes, I think we may be able to get that to 1.5 million a day rather than 1 million a day.
The president's comments came as he's faced criticism for suggesting 1 million vaccines a day as the initial distribution target.
That's not a big new goal. It's exactly what they inherited from the Trump administration and Operation Warp Speed.
The president also doubled down on his belief that schools should be able to reopen sooner rather than later.
I believe we should make school classrooms safe and secure for the students, for the teachers, and for the help that's in those schools maintaining the facilities.
But for that to happen, school districts would need additional federal funding. Mr. Biden is pushing for more school aid as part of his $1.9 trillion COVID relief package. He's already dismissing suggestions by some Democrats and Republicans that the proposal might need to be scaled down in order to pass, saying he expects negotiations to take at least a few weeks.
This is just the process beginning.
And Ed O'Keefe joins us now from the White House with more. So, Ed, as we mentioned, President Biden is expected to use his executive authority to address racism and xenophobia towards Asian Americans. What do we know about the directives he's planning to sign?
Yeah, so this one is based off of concerns among Asian American leaders, members of the Democratic Party, business leaders across the country, that, in the wake of the pandemic about this time last year, in the first few months especially, there was a lot of anti-Asian bias, people being attacked, called out on social media. Then, of course, we had a president who would call the COVID-19 virus various phrases that were seen as Asian or anti-Asian slurs. So what we believe today's document will do, essentially, is codify the idea that none of that is permissible in the Biden administration and try to wipe clean any reference to the pandemic in that disparaging way. Again, this was pushed by members of the Democratic Party, Asian American lawmakers, business leaders, and others who say, at a time when this pandemic was, obviously starting in China and spread around the world, there were a lot of incidents across the country of violence, of attacks, of businesses being boycotted, and they see this as an important step by the president in his early days to address that. Beyond that, we're expecting executive orders today regarding fair housing policy, perhaps some other things regarding immigrant rights. All of this part of the ongoing, well-planned rollout of executive orders that do a lot of modest and symbolic things to reverse decisions made by the past president or put in place new policies to address some things that have come up over the course of his campaign and promises he made.
Ed, much had been made of President Biden's announcement that he wanted 100 million doses of the coronavirus vaccine in his first 100 days, until it was pointed out that the country was pretty much on track for that already. And so now he has said he wants 1.5 million doses of the COVID vaccine. So that's a 50% higher target. How realistic is that, considering we've heard a lot of talk about certain states running out of vaccine, that we don't know how much vaccine the country actually has? Is anyone addressing any of these issues from the administration?
Well, the administration continues to say that the plan that was left for them was virtually non-existent. That's, depends on how you interpret this. Operation Warp Speed obviously was stood up by the Trump administration, is still being run out of the Pentagon to some extent. The concern or the issue was that Biden administration officials, even before they got in, couldn't really nail down how many doses of the vaccine actually exist here in the United States are in the possession of the federal government to be doled out to the states. And one of the frustrations we've heard from state leaders especially is that they get very few days notice from the federal government how much is coming their way. so they can't really plan in advance too far to alert people, hey, show up on Wednesday and you'll get your first or second shot. They're trying to get a handle on that. The president yesterday optimistic that that can happen in the next few weeks, but he has warned, since he won the election, that this is going to be one of the largest, if not the most difficult, logistical feats of the federal government. That's why he's pushing FEMA and other aspects of the federal government to help the states in distributing the vaccine and setting up large distribution sites. There is some chatter about possibly using members of the military to help distribute or even give the vaccine as well, in a sort of a non-military role, but just to use the logistical supply chain that exists. And, you know, if you look at numbers that are tracked by various groups, yeah, we're at about 1 million doses a day. The goal is 100 million doses by April when we hit that 100-day mark of this presidency. So, you know, you do the math and you're able to keep that, you're probably, you know, going to get there. So that's why you see him now nudging his team to move ahead a little bit and see, can we get to 1.5? You know, conceivably in a few weeks, they might be able to turn around and say, we can do more than that. We'll see. The goal, of course, is the sooner these vaccines get into the arms of people, the sooner the country can get back to normal, the sooner the conversation about schools and reopening restaurants and everything can change. And obviously, it's in his interest to make sure that that happens quickly.
Ed, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi appears optimistic that the House will pass President Biden's economic relief package next week. Is it likely to face pushback from Republicans?
Yes, to put it simply. Is the Pope Catholic, to put it one way? Is the sun going to come up tomorrow? Yes, there will be resistance to this from Republicans. But the issue is in the House, given even the narrow majority they have, they can do this with mostly Democratic votes. The question will be how many of those more moderate Democrats or ones that face potentially difficult races in 2022 have to hold back or at least raise some skepticism about the size, scope, and price of this. $1.9 trillion is nothing to sneeze at. There's a lot there, and there's concern among moderate Democrats, Republicans who are trying to negotiate with the White House that perhaps this doesn't need to happen so quickly because the $900 billion that was set up by the White House, or was approved by Congress just in December, still hasn't entirely trickled out. And so they'd like to wait and see how much of that money still needs to get into the system and how it might change things. The other point that lawmakers make is the sooner you get vaccines in the arms of Americans, the sooner the economy will start to rebound. We'll see. The House can move quickly on this, probably will move faster than the Senate. It's, of course, over in the Senate where there will be negotiating about this, where there will likely be some changes, where the president concedes it's going to take a few weeks to get this done. But look, nobody should be surprised by that. The House is designed to move faster than the Senate, even on big things like this. And in the Senate, given the 50-50 divided nature of the place, it's going to require compromise and negotiation that we should expect will continue through at least March.
So the hope is, though, that you know, they'll be able to fast track it. But you just said something right at the tail end there. You said negotiations will continue until at least March. So then, when would Americans see a check?
At the earliest, at this point, realistically, likely is March, because even if something were to be passed in February, it's going to take a few weeks for the IRS and the Treasury Department to get those checks together. There is support for those $1,400 stimulus checks, the direct aid to families that need it. The question will be, under what piece of legislation does that get approved? What other strings are attached? That's why there's some saying, you know, why not just pass a bill that sends that out and provides some other, you know, direct aid to states and cities and schools that might need it for the vaccine, or to boost the vaccination programs across the country, and deal with all this other stuff later. Democrats turn around and say, no, we should be able to do this all right now. But again, let's see how long it takes. Do they split this apart and put some things in one bill so that a certain number of people can vote for it, and then in another bill so that other people can vote for it? And even if it gets through the House quickly, it's going to take longer in the Senate. It'll get changed in the Senate. It'll have to get sent back to the House. Any changes made over there, they're sent back to the Senate. In there, you've got a President's Day break. You've likely got an address from the President to a joint session of Congress to try to make this happen. There will be other delays. February is a short month. So March is likely when this is sorted out at the earliest.
Oh, wow. Not the best news for people who are waiting for that check to keep them afloat. Ed, thank you so much.